Ben, we'll finish today. We got to pick up the pace just a little bit from what we've been doing, but we'll finish the 100 questions from the U.S. citizenship test. So I think we're on question 65. You guys can see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
The one that's
Okay.
the one that says what happened at the Constitutional Convention.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll click through these flashcards as we've done before. There's some history. We'll get into history, and then well, I looked at them before we logged in. I think it's a lot of it's kind of back looking at history here, and then a little bit of just sort of general, kind of general American questions. A lot of them are fairly quick and easy. Not too many are too difficult here. But so let's jump in. So think back, put on your history hats here. Back at the Constitutional Convention, okay, convention group of people, in this case, all rich, probably white men, definitely white men, probably all rich. They get together for the purpose of writing a constitution. What happened at the Constitutional Convention?
The Constitution was written, probably.
Yeah, they wrote the U.S. Constitution. Okay, wait, wrong one, gotta click it here. The Constitution was written, these men that we call the Founding Fathers, because they founded or established the country. The Founding Fathers wrote the Constitution. And as we've talked about in the past, this is after a few years of what they had, a different government, the first government, under the Articles of Confederation. That was like the first government. They didn't quite like it. It wasn't quite right. So they rewrote the Constitution, which gives us the government we have today, which is really the second government that we've had. The first one, the Articles of Confederation government, wasn't, they weren't crazy about the way it was working. So actually pretty quickly, less than 10 years, it was redone. Okay, when was the Constitution written? Do we know?
1776?
Wasn't 1776. That would be the Declaration of Independence. They declared their independence in 1776.
I forgot this number. 70. Oh, I don't want to guess.
Anybody know when the Constitution was written?
Was it 1776?
1787. It was written. So 1776, the colonists declare independence. They write the Declaration of Independence. Then they start fighting. They kind of already had been fighting the British Army. Of course, they were British at the time too. They were colonists. But the people we'll call Americans start fighting the British Army. They're in a war. They're in the Revolutionary War. They are revolting against having a revolution against the British to not be British anymore. So then they're fighting the war. As they're fighting the war, they establish this government. Even before they had won, they write the Articles of Confederation, which gives them their American government. This is as they're fighting a war. So they're, the British didn't even say that the war was over yet. They're still fighting to keep the colonies part of Britain. That goes, 1776 to 1787. That's 11 years. So it's 11 years before they win the war. They sign what was called the Treaty of Paris, the treaty that ended the Revolutionary War. Now you have an official country, the United States of America. Britain accepts it. The war is over. They sign the treaty. Then you still have a total of 11 years before they say, hey, this isn't working. We got to redo this. So they have the Constitutional Convention. They write the U.S. Constitution. Okay. Now they write the Constitution, but then it needs to be passed. Okay. It has to be ratified by every state. Okay. They've written it, but now they have to have every state agree to it, which makes sense because it's, the people in every state are the people who are going to be the nation. So people write a series, a couple of men write a series called the Federalist Papers. And here it says the Federalist Papers supported the passage of the U.S. Constitution. Name one of the writers. Okay, so some of those founding fathers, there's three, I think, that write a series of like 80 some, quite a lot of papers, like really letters to each other, or maybe they were published in newspapers, but they circulated these papers that explained the Constitution. Because this was a new thing. People were worried, well, we have a president, like, what is the president going to do? We're going to have a Senate and a House of Representatives. What are they going to do? How's this going to work? Like, it needed more explanation. Okay. So they gave more explanation. This is outside of the Constitution. This is not part of the Constitution, but it's the men that wrote the Constitution explaining more about it. Okay. Evelyn, thank you for logging in. What we're doing today, Evelyn, is we're looking at a series of flashcards online. These are the questions that you have to answer to become a U.S. citizen. Okay, so this isn't a U.S. citizenship class. You know, we just talk about history and government generally to prep mostly for the GED test. But these are good questions, and so we just use them just today as kind of a fun way to cover the basics of American history. Okay, so who do we think, name some of the founding fathers. Who do you think, or maybe you know, does anybody know who wrote the Federalist Papers?
Was it Jefferson? Thomas Jefferson? Oh, no.
I think Jefferson. I'm not sure. We're going to see in a moment when I click to flip this over. It may be Jefferson. Good guess, maybe.
And I know there are some unknown names for me too, so I don't remember the rest of them.
There's one person that is called the father of the Constitution because he ended up writing quite a lot of it. Of course, the ideas, they came up as a group in the Constitutional Convention, but then, of course, somebody had to write it down, write down that first draft. So one person wrote the Constitution largely, and we call him the father of the Constitution. Let's see here. And that is James Madison. James Madison is, we call the father of the Constitution. And no, we don't have Jefferson. I thought maybe Jefferson was. We have James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay. Okay, really those three. They did, and the purpose was to explain how the Constitution, how this new government was going to work in order to make the people in the states, like the regular people, the voters, comfortable with it so that they would accept it and their states would accept it and it would be ratified and it would become law. They used the pen name, kind of the fake name, Publius, which is Latin for the people, the public. That was kind of their pen name that they published some of these letters under. Okay, so the Federalist Papers. Maybe we can take a look sometime at the Federalist Papers. Okay, Benjamin Franklin. What is Benjamin Franklin famous for?
I forgot. The lightning.
The lightning, yeah. Yeah, what did he do with lightning?
Electricity, right?
Yeah, he captured, like, famously. Now, I don't know exactly the details, and sometimes a story like this through history might get a little bit changed. But the story is that he tied a key onto a kite, right? And during a thunderstorm, during a lightning storm, and it was struck by lightning, and the lightning came down the string, and then at the bottom of his kite, he had some sort of metal thing, and I don't know what, but he did something with lightning, did an experiment with lightning. Some people say he discovered lightning. That's not true. People knew about it already. But he did some sort of experiment with lightning and a kite and a key during a lightning storm. So yeah, electricity. Anybody know what else?
It's supposed to be related to the Constitution, probably.
Well, right, because yeah, we're in the middle of those questions. So he was big in the writing of the Constitution. He was big in the writing of the Declaration of Independence as well. He played a role there. Benjamin Franklin. Let's take a look. Let's get a look at Benjamin Franklin. Okay, so this is Benjamin Franklin. Okay, you've seen this face before. Benjamin Franklin, famous founding father, helped write the Constitution, helped write the Declaration of Independence. Was he ever president?
I don't remember.
He was
I don't
not.
think so.
No, Benjamin Franklin was one of the few founding fathers that was never president. He was never a senator. He was never a lot of things. He was never in the president's. Well, no, I can't say that for sure. He never held very high office. He kind of was the behind the scenes guy quite a lot. So let's see what it says. He was a U.S. diplomat. He represented the United States in London and Paris. He during the Revolutionary War, he was sent to Britain and to France to try to negotiate an end to the war as we were fighting the war. He was the oldest member of the Constitutional Convention. He was the first Postmaster General of the United States. The post office was kind of his idea. Writer of Poor Richard's Almanac, kind of a newspaper at the time. Started the first free libraries, and that's true. He came up with, well, I don't know if he came up with the idea, but he started free public libraries, which is pretty cool. So that was Benjamin Franklin. Who is the father of our country? Now, we have the founding fathers, but who's the one person that we would consider the father of our country?
Washington?
Yeah, George Washington. Okay. Played a role, I believe played a role in the Constitutional Convention, but when they all got together to write the Declaration of Independence, what was Washington's job during the Revolutionary War?
Did he lead the army?
He was general of the army. Okay, so he was a famous general, a good general. Some people say actually he wasn't great. He made some mistakes that historians pick on him for, but a good, very well respected, very well liked. So when they wrote the Constitution and they wrote this job, president in the executive branch of the government, they have the president. They actually had him in mind, and so he was elected president, the first president. Okay, so we consider him the father of the country. George Washington. Okay, who was first president? We just said George Washington was the first president. What territory? Okay, so this is a few years later, 1803. This is after 1787. We have the writing of the Constitution. I don't think the Constitution was ratified till 1789. So 1789, 1790, you have a start of the actual government. They have the elections. We have senators, House of Representatives, the President of the United States. They name people to be the first Supreme Court. I think it's an interesting time to study because it's like the first, like the begin, like how do you start something brand new? I think that's kind of neat. But they have Washington comes, he serves one term, he steps down, he doesn't run for a second term. Thomas Jefferson is elected the second president of the United States in 1796. He's re-elected in 1800. 1803. What territory did the United States buy from France in 1803?
I think it was
New Orleans,
Louisiana.
right?
Well, New Orleans is a city in this territory.
Yes, I
Louisiana?
can't think of it.
Louisiana.
Was it Louisiana?
Okay, the Louisiana territory, or you say the Louisiana. Let's look at this because I like to see things visually. Let's say how do you spell Louisiana? That's tough. Some people call it the Louisiana Purchase because they purchased it from Louisiana. Okay, so here's a good map. You can see, pick any of these maps. Yeah, this is a good one. Okay, so the orange in this map on the right-hand side, the orange is the territory of the states of the United States at the time. Now, of course, a couple of these are new. They're not the original 13 states. You have Ohio, Kentucky, Louisiana. They're new. So they're adding states pretty quickly. The light blue, the pale blue, Michigan Territory, Illinois Territory, Indiana Territory, Mississippi Territory. It's land that belongs to the United States but hasn't become states yet. Okay, so the orange and the pale blue is the United States. In 1803, in one single purchase for I forget how many millions of dollars, but not very much, a surprisingly good deal. America buys from France all of this green surrounded in purple land, the Louisiana Purchase, doubling the size of the United States. Just with signing his name one time, Jefferson doubles the land belonging to the United States. The Louisiana Purchase is a big deal, 1803. Then, of course, they have their sights set on expanding the whole way to the Pacific Ocean, and that's going to take a little while longer. But the Louisiana Purchase, 1803, pretty big deal in American history. And that's Thomas Jefferson is the president during that time. Okay, name one war fought by the United States in the 1800s. The whole century, the 1800s, can we name one war?
Civil War?
The Civil War, 1860s. There's actually a few. Anybody else?
The War of 1812.
War of 1812, I was going to say that's an easy one. War of 1812, 1860s, we have the Civil War. Leading up to the Civil War, you have the Spanish-American War. Or no, the Mexican-American. That was the Mexican-American War, which they fought,
Right.
you know, kind of, well, let's look at that map again. Kind of to, here's the border with Mexico down here, and they're arguing over this land here, Texas and somewhat New Mexico, Arizona, what we would call, but a lot of Texas. That's in the 1840s, I think, the Mexican-American War. Not the most famous. Then you have the Spanish-American War in the 1890s. Definitely not a very well-known war. A lot of that happened. It didn't really happen in the United States. It happened in actually the Philippines quite a lot, across the ocean. So let's see what they say. Yeah, the War of 1812. There we go. The Mexican-American War, the Civil War, the Spanish-American War. Easy one there, yeah, 1812, because it's right in the name. Also, Civil War, if you're going to name another 1800s war, you better remember the Civil War, 1860s. Well, name the U.S. war between the North and the South.
The Civil War, right?
The Civil War. The Civil War is between the North and the South. At the time, they called it the War Between the States, which I think is kind of a neat, cool title for it. But yeah, the Civil War. Let's look real quick at the Civil War battle lines. Let's see. Yeah, we'll go with this one. Okay, so it's a war between the North and the South. Which of those two, the blue is the North, the red is the South, who was trying to break away from the United States? The North or the South?
The South.
The South was trying to break away from the United States and become their own country, okay, called the Confederate States of America. Not a very unique name. They're going to break away from the United States of America and become a different country called the Confederate States of America. But you have the Confederate flag. They're called the Confederates, the Confederacy. The North is the Union. Okay, so yeah, the North and the South are who fought during the Civil War. What do we have next? Name one problem that led to the Civil War.
What is it called?
Slavery.
Yeah.
Slavery, yeah. Slavery was really the root problem, okay. You also have economic reasons. The South was at the time very agricultural, okay, big farms worked by slaves, not entirely, but a lot. And then in the North is very industrial, a lot of factories, a lot more big cities. All the big cities in America are in the North, okay. The South wanted the North was richer because they have all the factories. The South tended to be poorer. The cities and the states were poorer because they were growing crops, which doesn't quite get you as rich as running a factory. So here our flashcard says economic reasons, states' rights. Some people say states' rights. Well, the South was fighting so that they had, because the country was um, they were worried about their states' rights. Well, the right that they wanted was the right to have slavery. So when people say states' rights, it's still talking about slavery. The states' rights that the South wanted to defend was the right to own slaves. But you can say, I mean, really, number one, slavery, economic reasons, and the South's concerns for states' rights. What was one important thing that Abraham Lincoln did?
I think he ended up the Civil War.
He was president during
He freed the slaves.
freed the slaves. Okay. President, yeah, let's look at a picture of Lincoln real quick. Okay. Abraham Lincoln, president during the Civil War, and then of course was assassinated right before, right before the Civil War ended. So pretty much he is assassinated at the moment, very closely, that the Civil War ends. So he did help. He was president throughout the Civil War, and was, the Constitution says that the president is commander in chief, leader of the army. So he is commander in chief during the Civil War. The Union, the North, wins the Civil War, so you could say that he helped win the Civil War. He helped free the slaves. Now the 13th Amendment is passed. The 13th Amendment is passed while he's living. So yeah, you could say he definitely freed the slaves because he was a big part of passing the 13th Amendment. So freed the slaves, also with the Emancipation Proclamation, saved or preserved the Union, led the United States during the Civil War. That's Abraham Lincoln. Okay, what did the Emancipation Proclamation do? Well, the last card just kind of told us.
Freed slaves.
It freed the slaves. Proclamation, it proclaimed, right? It's just kind of a proclamation of something. But emancipation, that's not a word we use a lot today, but to emancipate means to set free. So the Emancipation Proclamation is the proclaiming of the emancipation of the slaves. So sometime we could look at the Emancipation Proclamation. Interesting. That was as much, now certainly Lincoln did it to free the slaves, which is a good thing, but it was also a strategic move during the Civil War, right in the middle of the 4 years of the Civil War. So it was a strategic move to help win the war. And there's some interesting history about that. Free the slaves in the Confederacy. And that's an interesting point because the Emancipation Proclamation says that the slaves are free in areas in rebellion against the United States, which means it frees the slaves in the Confederacy, in the South. There are some slaves in the North, particularly in Let's look at this map here. These light blue states, okay? These light blue, which is, what's this? Missouri, I think, Kentucky, Ohio, Maryland, Delaware, these light blue states, they're called border states. They are blue, they're in the Union, they're in the North, but they have slavery. Everybody thinks, oh, all the slavery was in the South, in the Confederacy. That's not true. These light blue states have, during the Civil War, have slavery, but did not secede, did not rebel. They're in the North, they're in the Union. The Emancipation Proclamation doesn't free those slaves. It only frees the slaves in the areas that are rebelling in the Confederacy. So there's kind of an interesting story to the Emancipation Proclamation. He didn't free all the slaves. The slaves that he could really actually free that were in the North, he did not free. He's freed the slaves in the Confederacy with the Emancipation Proclamation. That's what this question is. With what's the question? Yeah, what did the Emancipation Proclamation do? Freed the slaves in the Confederacy. It's not till the 13th Amendment later that frees all slaves, ends slavery. Okay, moving on. Susan B. Anthony, making a kind of a big jump here, but anybody know Susan B. Anthony? Let's look up her picture. What did she do, Susan B. Anthony?
I think she fought for women's rights.
Women's rights? Yeah, what do we have here? It says fought for women's rights, fought for civil rights being, when we think of civil rights today, people think racial, the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s, African Americans, but civil rights apply to all people, right, including women. So women's rights are also considered civil rights. Susan B. Anthony fought for women's rights. When was she alive? What's her life, Susan B. Anthony? Oh, come on, Google. She was in the kind of the middle of the 1800s. I don't know, it's being slow. Middle of the 1800s. Of course, women didn't get the vote till 1920, right? So she didn't achieve that full goal during her lifetime. Okay, moving on. Name one war fought by the United States in the 1900s.
World War One, World War
The
Two.
Vietnam War?
Yeah, World War I, World War II, Vietnam.
Korean War.
Korean War. Let's see. Yeah, Korean War, Vietnam, and 1990s, the Persian Gulf War, which was Saddam Hussein, Iraq. That was when I believe when Iraq invaded the tiny country of Kuwait, and Saddam Hussein, and who was president during the Persian Gulf War? That was George Bush, the senior, the father. Okay, so those are all wars during the 1900s. Okay. Who was president during World War I? This is some history we've not looked at. Maybe you guys know though.
Eisenhower?
Good guess, not Eisenhower. Let's see. Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson was president during World War I. What was World War I? 1914 to 1919, something like that. Woodrow Wilson. Who was president during the Great Depression in the 1930s and World War II in the 1940s? Who was president?
Was it Roosevelt?
It was Roosevelt. Yeah, Franklin Roosevelt. FDR, Franklin Roosevelt. Voted for 4 terms in office, then died during his 4th term. So he didn't serve 16 years, but was elected 4 times through the 1930s into the 1940s. So yeah, Franklin Roosevelt was president during the Great Depression and World War II. Who was the other side? Who did the United States fight in World War II?
Japan, how to pronounce it? Japanese.
Germany?
Germany.
Germany
Nadia,
and
say Japan?
Japan,
Yeah.
Japan,
Japan, Germany,
and Italy.
and Italy. Okay. So Germany, what political party, what movement, what people were the bad guys from Germany in World War II?
The communists?
Fascism.
No, not communist. Fascist. Yeah, yeah. Nadia says
Fascism.
fascism. Fascism is a political type of politics, very extreme, has similarities to communism. Um, kind of, yeah, sort of. But who was the? They had the flags with the swastikas, and what party was that?
Hitler.
Hitler. Looking for one more word. He was leader of the.
Stalin?
Socialism party.
The Nazi Party.
Yeah, the Nazis. There we go. That was the one I was thinking of. Germany. Hitler. You have Adolf Hitler, leader of the Nazis. You know, you can probably picture in your head this swastika Nazi flag. Russia had Stalin, and that's a whole other history. Russia was led by Stalin at the time, who really was on our side for at least the second half um, of World War II. Italy was, I believe, Mussolini at that time. So yeah, fascists, they're dictators. Okay, Japan also enters the war. So World War II really was fought around the war. You have what they call two theaters of the war. You have the Western Front, or the European theater, kind of just the area. There's a war going on in Europe, and there's also a war going on in the Pacific, and that's um, all these different battles in the Pacific. Japan, that's why the Japanese came across sneak attack to bomb Pearl Harbor. So yeah, we're fighting really two wars at once: Germany and Italy in Europe, and fighting the Japanese in the Pacific. Okay. Before he was president, Eisenhower was a general. What war did Eisenhower serve in? General Eisenhower. Let's look at a president or a picture of him. Here's Dwight D. Eisenhower. He was a general leading the army, leading the military before he was later elected president. What war was he general in?
World War One.
Two?
Yeah, World War II. Yeah. Let me make sure. World War II. He led the Allied forces, like the tippy top of the military, and did a good job for the most part, and then was later elected president. Dwight D. Eisenhower. Okay, then we have the Cold War, and we've discussed the Cold War. It's not really a war with shooting, although there was plenty of missiles and nuclear missiles involved, and it was more of a fear that war could happen. Okay, so during the Cold War, what was the main concern of the United States? What were they
Communism.
Communism. They're trying to prevent communism. That the Russians, after World War II, that the Russians would influence all the other countries of Europe and Asia, and communism as a form of government would take over the world. That was the concern during the Cold War. Okay, moving on, 1900s, 1950s, and 60s now. What movement tried to end racial discrimination? What do we call that?
Civil rights
Yeah, civil rights.
movement.
The civil rights movement, we talked about, the Little Rock Nine, right? Little Rock, Arkansas, the high school, they tried to integrate, or did integrate, the the high school, many other things. Many famous people and activities in the civil rights movement, 1950s and 60s. Okay, what did Martin Luther King Jr. do? Now here you got to think,
Yeah,
if
she fought for women. He fought for civil rights, and he ended like, how can we call it?
Civil rights
Like
movement?
separation.
well, separation, the segregation, right? He fought against segregation. Yeah, he fought for civil rights generally. Fought for civil rights, worked for equality for all Americans. Okay, famous speaker, gave wonderful speeches. If you listen to a Martin Luther King Jr. speech, we don't really even hear speakers like that anymore because now everything's visual, right? Everything's online and everything's on TV. It's got to be visual. It's got to be very visual. And so we don't sit and close our eyes and listen to great speeches anymore. And so we don't really have, I would argue, we don't really have very many good speakers giving great speeches. So it's not a thing that we value as a society, I don't think. But if you listen, you can find on YouTube several Martin Luther King Jr. speech. They are good speeches. They're interesting. The way he develops his ideas it's very good. So he gave great speeches. He led protests. He did a lot of organizing, but really gave speeches, wrote letters, wrote essays, influencing the thought and influencing people in the civil rights movement. Okay, big jump here. What major event happened on September 11th, 2001 in the United States?
The United States were attacked by terrorists.
Okay, terrorist attack. What three places were attacked or were affected? Where was the main
The
attack?
Pentagon,
Okay, the Pentagon.
It was
New York City.
New York City is the main one, right? The World Trade Center, two towers, they fall. Also the Pentagon. What's the other one?
Pennsylvania?
Yeah, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Shanksville, Pennsylvania. What was the story there? What happened in Pennsylvania?
The passengers on the hijacked plane heard about the terrorist attack at the Twin Towers and diverted the airplane and ended up crashing in Shanksville.
Yeah, yeah. They didn't, it wasn't a terrorist attack on Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Shanksville, Pennsylvania is a tiny little town, I think. Um, it was a plane that was probably, I think, headed towards DC, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, the passengers found out what was going on, figured it out, and tried to fight to take the plane back. Ultimately, the plane crashes in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. I've never been there. I think my couple of my kids have on school trips. I'm only like an hour or two. I forget how far away. Um, yeah. But that's part of it. So there's three places that are affected um, on September 11th. Okay. Kind of maybe a tough one. Name one, and this when you take the citizenship test, you just have to name one. Name one American Indian tribe in the United States.
Cherokee,
Cherokee, okay.
Apache, that's my grandma.
Apache, okay, very cool.
I know one.
Okay.
Lakota.
Lakota, yeah.
Okay, go do your homework. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, he was right. Okay, so here's a bunch. There's a lot. Now these are historical. You can look back in our history and find these people, these names, these groups. But also today, the United States of America recognizes these, and I presume others. There's lots of Native American tribes. These are recognized as Native American tribes. And they have, as we kind of touched on recently, I think last week, they're a little bit, I don't know all the details, but they're kind of separate from the United States in some ways. And so you can be Cheyenne, Seminole, Lakota, Hopi, Inuit. Inuit are the what we call, some people call Eskimos up in Alaska and Canada. Okay. These are historical groups. They still exist today. They have their own specific histories, specific even languages. And so, yeah, these are, on the citizenship test, if you took it, you could say any one of these as an example. Okay, name one of the two longest rivers in the United States.
The Rio Grande.
Mississippi, probably.
Well, definitely the Mississippi. The Rio Grande, I don't know. Let's see what they say. No, the Missouri. Okay, so the Mississippi River. Let's see if we can get a picture of that one.
That's the only one I could think of.
Okay. Mississippi River. Okay. Here's the Mississippi River, the dark blue going up the middle. Okay, now there's all these branches. We have the Ohio River that starts in Pittsburgh, branches into the Mississippi River. And then the second that's I believe the longest. The second longest goes into the Mississippi River is the Missouri River here to the left, to the west. And it goes all the way from Montana out down into the Mississippi River and then out to the Gulf of Mexico. So this would be a map. This is from a website, Time Magazine. Can the Mississippi River handle the next big flood? Okay. But here on the left-hand side, it says the Mississippi River watershed. Okay. So if it rains in any of this dark gray area, or let's say you pour a glass of water on the ground, it will eventually get in a stream, get in a river, get in a bigger river, get in a bigger river, get in the Mississippi River, and get out to the Gulf of Mexico. So actually, Pennsylvania is partly in the Mississippi River watershed, partly in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, which is down Virginia, Maryland. So depending on where you are in Pennsylvania, if it rains or you dump a glass of water on the ground, it's going to go in one of a couple of different places. Okay, Mississippi River, Missouri River are the two longest rivers. What ocean is on the west coast of the United States?
Atlantic.
The west coast.
Atlantic on the east.
Pacific.
The Pacific. The Pacific Ocean is on the west coast. I think I know the next question. What ocean is on the east coast of the United States?
Atlantic.
The
Atlantic River. Okay. So in Pennsylvania, we are closest to the Atlantic Ocean. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So here, the Atlantic Ocean is between the United States and Europe and Africa. The east coast, this is the Atlantic Ocean. On the west coast, California, if you get in the ocean at California, it's a different ocean. That's the Pacific Ocean. Okay. East coast is the Atlantic. The west coast is the Pacific. America has I believe four territories. We'll see when I click on this. Name one U.S. territory. They're not states, but they are part of America. Name one U.S. territory.
Hawaii.
No, Hawaii
Mountain.
was a territory, but
Okay.
it became a state in I think 1959. Hawaii is a state.
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
Alaska.
No, Alaska is a state.
Um.
Puerto Rico is probably the most known. Okay, let's see here. Puerto Rico. Oh, there's five. Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, American Samoa, Guam, yeah, and Northern Mariana Islands. Okay, small little islands. They are part of the United States. Those people are U.S. citizens. When there was the hurricane, wasn't it? I forget when that was. The hurricane in Puerto Rico. Some people were even referring to the governor of Puerto Rico as the president of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is not another country. It is America. Those people are American citizens. They don't vote because it's weird. They don't vote in American elections, but they are American citizens. It is American territories. Those territories have not become states. Actually, if we go back to my original map, okay, so, oh, it's the Civil War map. The red and the blue from the Civil War were states at that time, 1860, 61, whatever. The yellow, it says Washington Territory, Nebraska Territory, unorganized territory, New Mexico Territory, was territory of the United States. It had not been organized and declared a state yet, but it was territory. It belongs to the United States. Same exact thing with with Puerto Rico and these other ones. They're territory of the United States. They are not states, but if you live there, you are American. I don't believe you need a passport to go there. I mean,
But it sounds really strange. So people are American citizens, but their rights as a citizen are limited.
yes, now they have the same civil rights, right to free speech and everything there, but they don't. Maybe we could look at this sometime. They don't get to. The one thing that I know, they don't get to vote in national elections. They don't vote for. Well, actually, they do. I think. They cast a vote. They hold a national election. They voted in the last presidential election, but it's interesting and kind of crazy. Those votes don't count. So they have the practice of voting for president, but they're not actually voting. Like their votes don't go anywhere.
Can they move to another state like really easily, or do they have to have some permission?
No, I think you could. I mean, if you had a job, it'd be just like moving. If I moved to
State to
Kentucky,
state?
I believe. It's a very strange situation, and it's not something that we think about very often. Now, if you live in Puerto Rico, if you live in the American Samoa, I'm sure you know all about it. But sitting here in Pennsylvania, it's not something that affects my life very much. It's not something we think about very often. It's a crazy, crazy situation. But those are the 5 American territories. Okay, I want to zoom through. We're going past noon. If you need to log off, I understand, but we'll finish up here real quick. So, name one state that borders Canada. Oh, you know what? Hold on.
Pennsylvania.
I have a. Let me. Hold on. Let me answer my door real quick. I'll be back in 1 sec.
Okay. So I think Maine borders Canada.
Okay, I'm back. Okay, name one state that borders Canada.
Maine.
Pennsylvania. And probably
Maine.
Minnesota too.
Okay. Let's see.
Michigan.
That's not a very good map. We have Maine. What was the last one? Somebody said
Michigan.
Michigan. Yeah, Michigan.
Minnesota probably, no?
Yeah, Minnesota here. This kind of
And Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. I don't know. You could say Pennsylvania. Now, if you go up to Erie, Pennsylvania.
Yes, I'm in Erie.
Okay. If you look north, what are you looking at?
Erie Lake.
Lake Erie. Okay. So,
yeah.
But of course, Lake Erie, if there's a line, an imaginary line across Lake Erie, half belongs to Canada, half belongs to the United States. So I don't know. I guess I never thought of Pennsylvania bordering Canada, But I mean, on the other side of that water is Canada, so I guess you could say Pennsylvania. I don't know. Let's see what they say here.
And New York State. When you
Do they say
go
Pennsylvania?
to
They don't.
Niagara waterfall, it's
Oh, they do
really
say
on a
Pennsylvania.
border.
Yeah, New York State. Okay, New York, you go to Niagara Falls. That's, you're right by Canada there. Walk across the bridge. They do say Pennsylvania borders Canada. I never thought of Pennsylvania as bordering Canada, but I guess we do. Okay. Name one state that borders Mexico.
Arizona.
Arizona.
What about Texas?
There's only a couple. Arizona,
Texas?
Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California. Those are the only four. Okay. The southern border is much smaller. There's lots. I don't know how many here. There's quite a lot that border Canada. Okay. So yeah, border Mexico, you only have four. What is the capital of the United States?
Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C. The interesting story there is they created Washington, D.C. It's not like they chose the city and said, oh, Washington, D.C., we're going to make that the capital. They created it. They built it as the capital. There was not a city there. And this was very shortly after the Constitution was written. They said, hey, well, we need a capital city. And they said, well, let's do New York. And New York's the biggest. Or Philadelphia. Philadelphia is big and important. And it was for a little bit. But they built Washington, D.C. from scratch, from nothing, because they wanted to build national capital. I think that's kind of neat. They planned it out, built the buildings, people moved in. It was small, but they started with the Capitol building. Before there was even a city there, they started building the Capitol building and the White House. So it's kind of neat. So Washington, D.C., our national capital. Where is the Statue of Liberty? What state or what city?
New York.
Yeah, New York City. Liberty Island is where, technically the island that it's on. New York City, New York Harbor. Why does the flag have 13 stripes?
Because the first 13 states.
Yeah, the original, they represent the 13 colonies. Well, I guess, I was going to say 13 states too, but I guess they represent the original 13 colonies because, remembering that we were colonies of Britain. Okay. Why does the flag have 50 stars?
Represent 50 states.
Represents the 50 states. And you can see, let's see, USA flag. They have at different times as states have been brought into the country, as different territories become different states, they've had to add, never subtract, they've added states. So I just Googled USA flag with 45 stars. So it looks a little bit different. If we do I guess before that, it probably had 43 stars and it would look kind of weird. This is a slightly different star pattern than we're used to seeing. But that's the way it worked. They must have done it, As they picked up states, they had to add in new stars. So it'd be interesting to be a flag maker over the last 200 years because you always have to have, be up to date on your flags and stars. Okay, what is the name of the national anthem?
The Star Spangled Banner.
Right, the Star Spangled Banner, written during the War of 1812. When do we celebrate Independence Day?
July
4th.
July 4th. It's a classic joke, When is July 4th? When are we going to hold July 4th this year? July 4th, okay. Last question, name 2 national U.S. holidays.
Martin Luther King.
President's Day, Martin Luther King
Day.
Day.
President Day, Memorial Day, Labor Day,
Yeah. Okay. New Year's Day. Now these are
Christmas.
national recognized holidays. New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, President's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Columbus Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. So those are the national holidays. And different states also, sometimes there's states have holidays. In New England, some of the New England states, just this Monday, it's always the third Monday of, wait, no, is it? Yeah, it's always the third Monday of April, is they recognize in the New England states, they call it Patriots Day. And it just commemorates the Patriots, not the football team, but the colonists who broke away during the American Revolution, because of course New England, Boston and Massachusetts and New England states were integral, big part in the American Revolution. So they have Patriots Day. That's recognized in a couple of states, but not nationally. These here are national holidays. Okay. All right. Nice work. We studied 100 terms. Let's not start over. Okay. So those are the questions. Those are good. There's some good, 2 weeks ago we did the beginning where there was a lot of government questions. Today is more history. So I'll email these out again. You can study them again. If you look at these, if you have any ideas of interesting things or anything that you think we should be looking at, that you'd like to take a day and study, read more about, learn more about, discuss, just let me know. Send me an email. I'll email out this information as I always do. And next week, I got a couple of ideas here of things we can talk about sometime soon. But if you ever think I'd really like to learn more about this, or learn more how this is important in history, or where this fits into things, this war, this person, just send me an email. We can look into it. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody
Thank you.
logging in. Okay. So have a great day, and I'll be in touch.
Okay, you
Thank
too.
you. You too. Thank you.
All right.
Have a
Take
good day,
care,
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Right.